Hello and good afternoon. This is Friday, October the 23rd, and we are continuing our study of Greek culture and Greek thinking. My estimation is that we probably will have our test over Greece towards the end of next week, when we get a better idea of how many students will be in here, whether there'll be students in here. I'm recording, it's Wednesday, and they're making that big decision on Thursday night. So, we're going to see. So I'm aiming for the end of next week, October 29th, 30th, somewhere in there for our test. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. And after that, we'll see which direction we'll go. I mean, that's the thing. We have to be so flexible. Yeah. And it really, it's overwhelming to me. I know it's overwhelming to you. But let's talk about ancient Greece in the time during the age of Pericles. And let's see. There we are. Okay. As it says there, what is Greek rationalism? We're talking about, the evolution of ancient Greece, the things that came out of the golden age of Athens, the the 4th century BC, no, 3rd century BC, yeah. 3rd century BC. Rationalism was, once again, it goes back to that same idea that many of the Greeks, okay, not many of the Greeks, some of the Greek intelligentsia began to think that, once again, natural phenomena, that means storms, death, disease, plague, earthquakes, fires that consume a city, that these things are not curses of the god, but rather have natural causes, rational causes, explainable causes. Now, of course, the Greeks had no idea what those might have been. They tried to guess, and they tried to use logic to guess. But yeah, that's a very important thing to keep in mind. Okay, as it says there, part E, Athens, after the victory over the Persians, thought that, to be honest, Athens thought they were pretty hot stuff. And most of the other Greek city-states, because it had been the Athenians who had finally defeated the Persians at the Battle of Salamis, sent Xerxes packing. Most of the other Greek city-states kind of gave, allegiance to Athens. And Athens will take advantage of this. Okay. So Athens tried, and for a time greatly succeeded in assuming the political, military, cultural, and actual leadership of the ancient Greek city-states, even though the argumentative Greeks, because the Greek city-states were, they didn't trust foreigners, but they also didn't trust each other, not one bit. In fact, the Greeks were never truly unified until they were conquered by Alexander the Great, whom we'll talk about in a day or so. Yes, the word polis, which is on your test. The word polis is a Greek word, and it's a reference to the individual city-state. Once again, a city-state, little village, maybe a big city like Athens, the surrounding fields that supply it with food, and that is the polis, and it acted as an independent country. And so, yeah, polis. Pericles was one of the greatest leaders of Athens, although later on he will die in the Peloponnesian War and die of the plague. But yeah, here's the problem with the Athenians. The Athenians, after they had won the Persian Wars, driven the Persians out, the Athenians compelled the other Greek city-states to join their alliance, called the test question, the Delian League. The Delian League, hopefully you're typing this in by now. The Delian League was this um, military alliance of which Athens was the leader. And, military alliances have come and gone throughout history, but the Athenians basically compel the other members of the Delian League to pay protection. Tribute, it's called, which is a test question. To pay tribute. You say, well, what does that mean? I mean, it's like this, okay? Representatives of the city-state of Athens would go visit the other city-states and say to their leadership, wow, you have a nice city here. Thebes is a nice city. It would be terrible if somebody came along and burned down your city. Yeah. And so why don't you pay us some money and we'll make sure we don't burn down your city. See, it's extortion. It's blackmail. It's also called tribute. Okay. All right. The Peloponnesian Wars were a series of wars that lasted 30 years between Athens and their rivals from Sparta. Eventually, the city-states of Athens and Sparta, two biggest kids on the block, two biggest egos on the block, eventually they're in a fight. And the wars literally lasted for about 30 years. And in the end, between the plague and the fighting, Athens loses eventually. Sparta wins, but by the end of it, Sparta was so weakened that it was then easy pickings for Alexander the Great to take over. Oh yes, this question here, worth noting, in case you happen to see it on another test. How were women treated in Athens? Not good. Here's the thing. Athenian men, Spartan men actually had treated their women with pretty decent respect. Spartan women, and you're writing, could own property. Spartan women received training to be strong. Athenians felt that the best woman, in fact, Pericles said it, where it says on there, what did Pericles say about a good wife? Pericles said a good wife is one you don't hear anything about. But by and large, the Athenians, and to be honest, many of the Greeks, felt that women were just made for childbirth. That if you want to have children, yes, you have a wife and you have children. However, if you want to have a relationship with another human being, and I'm talking about love here, I'm talking about agape love, where you talk, where you share thoughts, secrets, and love, then women aren't worthy. You should find another man. And in the end, yes, this did. Okay, well, I mean, homosexuality was not infrequent at all in the classical world, neither Greek nor Roman. And to be totally honest, remember the word hedonism comes from ancient Greece. It was a word the Christian church used to describe the Greeks and Romans. I mean, sex with people with the same sex, and also sex with children was not unusual, and not unusual at all during this time. And that's once again is why the Christian church, when it comes along and takes over, simply thinks that anything and everything that the ancient Greeks do and the ancient Romans did was of Satan. But yeah, how were women treated in Athens? Still hadn't finished that question, Mr. Horton. Women were very second-class citizens. In fact, there is a story, and I may have said this before, there's a story of this one particular athlete who participated in the Olympic Games. And his mother really wanted to see him because, he was fast. And so his mother wanted to see him compete, but women were not allowed to go to the Olympic Games. And so what this woman did, she trussed herself up, wore a hood over her head, and bound her body parts to where she looked no curves, you know what I'm saying? And then she wore a tunic, and once again, a tunic is just a long t-shirt. So she wears this tunic. She then goes to the games and watches the game. And of course, her son wins the race, and she's very excited about it. And she runs down the hill to greet her son who has won. And in running down the hill, she trips, and when she trips, her tunic flies up over her head, and everything was revealed. And they killed her because women are not allowed to go in public places, not in Athens. As it says there, when Athenian men were more likely to spend time with the hetera, foreign women. Why? Because they found them to be, they're foreign, they're interesting. And those were the only women permitted to attend Greek theater. And as it says there, what did Pericles say about a good wife? A good wife's one you never hear about. Oh, and look, how were women treated in Sparta? Like I said before, that Spartan women were trained hard as children. They wanted them to be good mothers. Spartan women, since the men were away all the time. Remember, Spartan men spent the great majority of their lives out of the house with their unit training, and they only slipped back in the middle of the night to have relations of one sort or the other in secret with their wives. In fact, it was said that most Spartan men had never seen their wives by the light of the day. But Spartan women were the freest women in Greece. They could, not only did they own property and businesses, they occupied positions of leadership. And so, yeah, there's the answer to the question. Spartan women actually got much better treatment than Athenian women. And the Athenians were supposed to be the ones who were cultured. Okay. The Acropolis was a hill upon which sat the Parthenon, the other, major buildings of ancient Athens. Forgive me, sorry, it's been a long day. The patron goddess of Athens was, of course, Athena, the goddess of wisdom. And one day I've got to go down to Nashville, Tennessee, and see the Parthenon because it's supposed to be an exact model. The Parthenon was a large structure in the middle of the Acropolis, on top of the Acropolis, that housed a giant golden statue to Athena, the goddess of the patron saint. And as it says there, where can a modern Parthenon be found today? Nashville. Post and lintel construction. This is the lintel, and like Rick Steve said, that post is what holds it up. Columns, post and lintel construction. How has Athenian, Greek, Roman architecture influenced modern and American architecture? Quite simple. If you go to Washington, D.C., then what you're looking at is neoclassical architecture, new classical architecture. The founding fathers of the United States of America wanted everyone to know that the United States and its government and its democracy were a form of a descendant of the Greeks and Romans, a descendant of Greek democracy, a descendant of Roman republicanism. And so the buildings in Washington, and in fact every state capital in the United States of America, is a neoclassical structure, a building that is meant to look like it came from ancient Greece and Rome. Now, you say, how is it different? Once again, it goes back to color. The buildings in the United States have no color. They're white because they thought that's what the Greeks did. But the Greeks didn't do that. The Romans didn't do that. They loved color. They painted them. But of course, sitting around in the sun for 2,000 years will bleach anything white. Okay, pushing on, please. Yes, classical columns contain deep grooves called flutes, and you better believe that's a word on your test. Okay, now let us explore Greek sculpture. What is classical humanism? Classical humanism is a way, and I write this out because way of thinking and expression that pays homage to the power of this guy, the common man, as opposed to constant cowering before gods, the Greek gods especially, who might or might not be paying attention. I mean, the Greek gods, remember, were anthropomorphic. They were like human in that they weren't divine. They, a lot of times they were jealous, a lot of times they were vengeful, a lot of times they played tricks on human beings, they were lustful. So, whereas the greatest of the Greek statues of this period were almost always of some deity or an athlete, it also showed them as being very human. Now, page 56 and 58 in your book just simply shows some examples of Greek statues of human beings. The Kouros, Kouros. And this is a great book, by the way. You're going to like it when you get here. Okay, Greek theater began as a part of the celebration to the god Bacchus. Bacchus was the god of wine and partying. Yeah. Why are Greek plays today referred to as classical and studied and performed even today? Because once again, the plot lines that you see in any television program, any drama, any comedy, any movie traces its origins all the way back to the ancient Greek dramas, tragedies, and comedies. I mean, once again, going back to the Trojan horse theme, Trojan horse theme is the Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers with the Helm's Deep, the destruction of Helm's Deep. That is Independence Day with the blowing up of the giant alien ship. That is Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, where they blow up the Death Star, etc., etc., etc. Trojan horse. Tragedy, of course, is a play whereby the climactic event is something very unfortunate happening to the central figure. Something unfortunate happening to the central figure. I'm always misspelling the word tragedy. One day I'll learn how to spell it. Yes? What is a comedy? A comedy is, a farce. A comedy is a play whose intention is to create laughter. Achilles was a Greek playwright. He wrote Orestia. Yes, what was it about? You see, that story, Troy, was not an accurate depiction of what happened in the Trojan Wars, what happened in the Iliad. In the real story of the Iliad, Menelaus, the mean, nasty husband of Helen, the one you don't like, the one Hector kills, in reality, Menelaus survives. Agamemnon gets killed. Menelaus survives, and Menelaus goes back to not Ithaca, but Greece, where he's killed by, of all people, his son. Yeah, it's a tragedy. Sophocles was another Greek playwright. He wrote a play, very famous, called Oedipus the King. Oedipus Rex. Oedipus the King. Rex is Greek for king. In this play, once again, one of the very famous one, it's a play about this guy who is traveling to a city, and on the way to the city, he encounters some guy, and they argue, and Oedipus kills him. And then when he finally gets to the city, he meets and falls in love with a woman and marries her. And you say, well, that's great, isn't it? Well, except for the fact that Oedipus had been adopted, and the man that he killed on the way to the city was his father. The woman he fell in love with and married was his mother. I mean, psychologists today often talk about that small children have an Oedipal complex. They love their mother, hate their father. Hubris, hubris, hubris. Ah, yes. We're going to end with these two terms today. What is hubris? What is catharsis? Hubris is something that oftentimes Greek heroes would have, such as Achilles. Hubris is pride, and pride goes before a fall. Hubris is a flaw. It is pride. It is something that befell many Greek heroes. However, oftentimes, at some point in time, the hero reaches catharsis. And catharsis is where the hero of the story realizes that he has done something wrong, that he is flawed, and he intends to correct that flaw. And that point in the story where the hero says, I'm wrong, I must fix myself, I must fix this, is often called catharsis. And so, yes, that's where we are. And I think I've done enough damage for today. We will continue on tomorrow. Have a good day. Remember that you owe me a scripting from yesterday, scripting from that film yesterday. I can't violate copyright from Rick Steves anymore. I mean, you'd think after I bought all his discs that I wouldn't be copyright infringement. Must be that I am now. So thank you very much. Have a good day.